I'm trying to reach out to the speaker, but she didn't pick up the phone. And so maybe we go to the reading, and I will take that up on commonalities and specialities, universals and specialities. Can you hear me?
Yeah, clearly. We can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you very much. So this painting that you see in front of you, which comes from the book by Egon Spiegel and Liu Cheng, Peace Building, Peace Studies in the Globalizing World, is an invitation for us to think about the universals and the specialities. This painting by the Nigerian artist, Stephen Folarami, shows 4 different hats that are worn by people from different parts of his country. In fact, his country is Nigeria. I happen to have met him also in Germany. We can immediately discern different forms, different sizes, and different colors. In discovering so many really interesting differences, we could overlook the universal, that they are beyond forms, sizes, and colors, hats, and the actual wearing of a hat. From the perspective important to peace studies, this painting tells us that the common grounds of cultures, nations, or religions, also of individuals, are occluded by outer appearances. You can meet this phenomenon in the common phrase, differences and commonalities, instead of commonalities and differences. In relation to the theory and the practice of peace building, we primarily have to see our commonalities as the common ground from which to look for peace in our partnerships, in our local or regional environment, and in the world. Finally, we should choose not to speak about differences, but about specialities besides commonalities. Cultures and religions are primarily linked by many commonalities, but they also have specific characteristics. The latter are peripheral, and although valuable and undeniable, cannot undermine the solid ground created through an understanding of our commonalities. Apples are primarily apples, no matter how they taste and which kind of apple we prefer. So let me also take this phone from Domale. Hello? Hello, are you there? Okay, please welcome to start your presentation. We are ready waiting here. No, it's already time. If you can start, please. Right. Okay. Okay, that's all right. Thank you so much. Thanks. Sorry, she thought it was starting in 15 minutes. So she thought she had a bonus of 15 minutes. Thank you very much indeed for your patience, and sorry for the time differences sometimes do us a trick. So I'm so glad that you are there, and you might already also know that we are preparing for a major international peace conference in Tanzania in May next year. And the theme, I think you'll find it interesting, which is Ujamaa, Ubuntu, New Pan-Africanisms, and the Future of World Peace. And we, as MAMA team are co-organizing this conference with a number of other African and international associations. So I'm sending this invitation to you, and I hope that you'll be able to come to Tanzania. I know some of you have already expressed your interest in coming to Tanzania, which is lovely. And so we can actually have the conference really with its name. And we'll be also celebrating the centenary of the life of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, the first president of Tanzania and the Ujamaa African socialism architect. And so I think it's something that is worth noting in your calendars. Start preparing now, because we are thinking that we should be in different places, starting from where Nyerere, the proclamation of the Arusha Declaration was made in Arusha, till his birthplace in Butiama through the Serengeti National Park, and conclude at this university, St. Augustine University of Tanzania. So welcome, and we are glad that our speaker is here today, and the time difference for sure, created some kind of interesting scenario, but it's all right now that you are there. We're happy to see you. If you can mute your microphone. Okay. No, not mute, actually, unmute. Sorry, the speaker, please, you are welcome to start your presentation.
Thank you all for your patience. I Googled the time change last night, and I was certain I knew exactly what time to be on here. So I appreciate your patience, and I want to thank all of you for being here. And for your, and George, to you and your team for all of your hard work in sustaining this community and building this community. It's very important for a lot of us who work in this area and sometimes have difficulty finding like-minded people. So I appreciate your work. And I am going to share my screen here.
Great, we can see it.
Fantastic, fantastic. So good day, wherever you're from, wherever you're at. It's morning here in Edmonton, Canada. I want to acknowledge that I am on Treaty 6 territory, which is the native land of many Indigenous peoples. And so I want to acknowledge that I'm sitting on borrowed land. My name is Dr. Damali Keys. I am an assistant professor at the University of Alberta in the Women's and Gender Studies Department. The title of my presentation this morning is Ogoni Women's Peace, Nonviolence, and Feminist Resistance. So my goals during this presentation is to first discuss Ogoni women's experiences of violence, and then we talk about women's quest for peace, and then how that quest for peace translates into the methods that they use of nonviolent resistance, particularly what I'm defining as love in action, a term borrowed from the great Reverend James Lawson Jr. And so we want to kind of think about how Ogoni women practice their nonviolence resistance as love in action, and use that as a quest for peace to maintain and to achieve their goals of eliminating violence in their region and their community. So an overview of the Ogoni struggle, I want to kind of begin in the beginning when we talk about MOSUP and FOA. MOSUP, by the way, stands for the Movement for the Survival of Ogoni People, and FOA stands for the Federation of Ogoni Women's Association. And both MOSUP and FOA join a long history of anti-colonial struggle in Nigeria, particularly when we talk about women's organizing, an important one to point out is the Aba Women's War, which Ogoni women also participated in 1930. And that was an anti-colonial struggle in which we could really see a lot of the remnants of this nonviolent resistance that women implemented in that particular struggle. And so that's the history that we're coming from when we talk about MOSOP and FOA. And fast forward to January 4th, 1993, that was the outing of MOSOP, right? The very first Ogoni Day happened on January 4th, 1993, when MOSOP declared Shell petroleum oil persona non grata in the region, ousted them from continuing their oil drilling practices, and accused them of committing genocide, in the words of Ken Saro-Wiwa, against the Ogoni people, in their environmental degradation, their refusal to acknowledge the needs of the people, etc. And so that's the same struggle that we are talking about today, and that we in both MOSOP and FOA continue to fight today. This is a map of the Ogoni land and the various oil wells that are in the region. And then in 2016, we had the commencement of the Ogoni cleanup. MOSOP won a very important battle in asking the Nigerian government to clean up the land, using the UNEP report, the United Nations Environmental Programs report, to get that going. And so finally, we have the commencement of this cleanup, and that is where we're at today, the figuring out exactly how this cleanup happens, and continuing to press the government to accomplish what it said it would do. Now, the significance of this study is that women have historically been left out of narratives about MOSOP's fight. And this, I believe, is the first in-depth study of Ogoni women's participation and contributions to the struggle. Here we are. So I want to just make note that I am really, this is an ethnographic study. It's based on ethnographic research that I conducted in Ogoni land for the past, I think, about ranging between 2015 and 2017 for the actual underground research, but has been ongoing since then. And it is the work that I'm presenting is based on, of course, my interpretation, but hopefully getting the correct, if there is such a thing, seeking to start from Ogoni women's perspective. And I draw from Na Dove's a quotation here that says, "The theories pertaining to the particularized nature of African women's experiences have largely been inadequate. Those related to the feminist tradition, both white and Black, have critiqued the social conditions of women within Europeanized societies and sought solutions within European paradigms." So to start from Ogoni women's perspectives, to even try to understand this work through Ogoni women's perspectives is very important, because as we know, there are many different interpretations of nonviolence, of feminism, etc. So we're really trying to focus on Ogoni women's perspectives here. So I want to start with one of the first goals of the presentation, which is to think about the violence that Ogoni women are dealing with. And I have just named a few in this area, but those are the main ones that I'm drawing on for this presentation in particular. Women mentioned issues of gun violence, of militarization in the area, just rampant violence against even just community members within the community in general. Of course, the issue of environmental degradation has been ongoing and remains a very important problem for the Ogoni women. Another issue is the debilitating poverty that is occurring in the region. And for women in particular, they mention minimal access to education and wanting to improve that. And everything else is summarized in just women's oppression in general. So gender oppression particularly. And so while many different sectors of the community might experience some of these violences, these are the ones that women really pointed out. And we can conclude that these forms of violence really affect women even more than other sectors of the community. And so from this violence, women are seeking peace, right? They're seeking an end to gun violence. And this is what peace means for them. They're seeking an end to environmental degradation, land degradation. They're seeking an end to poverty. They're fighting for girls' education, improved access to education. They're fighting for women's empowerment in general, right? And all of this begins to form Ogoni feminist resistance, Ogoni feminist perspectives. So stepping back just a second, MOSOP, the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people, is really about peace. And as the women explained, MOSOP, this one is a peace struggle. They're not fighting, they're not making trouble. This particular practice of peace means nonviolence resistance. So MOSOP in itself, as one of the main things that set it apart from other movements in Nigeria, in the region, was that they really did and have continued to stand on this nonviolent platform. And as we find, women were really drawn to that. So FOA is a branch of MOSOP, and so they continue this nonviolent practice. And one of the quotes from one of the women says, "This women's branch, we put peace. When there's trouble, we bring peace. When we're able to come out." They really see their goal as bringing peace to the community. Another quote from a woman named a FOA leader reads, "We don't look for trouble. We don't make trouble. We're just looking for how we'll do, and God can hear us, and our land progresses like Kenole said it should be." So when we talk about the violence against women, and I want to kind of enter this by giving you a story of one of the FOA leaders. Her name is Karalori. And this is just an observation, I guess a field note from my interview with her, and I'm going to read it. And the goal here is to really understand what poverty, the conditions of violence, I guess, in totality, and what it looks like on the ground. "My cousin and I met Karolini in her home, a sprightly woman in her late 70s who serves as president of the FOA Biara. She lives alone in a large compound fit for a multi-generational family. From the front of the compound, we walk through a series of unfinished rooms with bare cinder block walls, no roof, and dirt floors, where some would-be rooms have been converted into gardens and others storage spaces. Many of the walls have moss growing on it, an indication of the many years they have been left exposed. Karoli directs us to the furthest room at the end of the hallway, where we enter one of the only finished rooms, a small space with 2 cots, one for sleeping and another for sitting. There we speak about her organizing activities with the Federation of Women's Association. As we spoke, she gave an in-depth look at the issues she experiences on a daily basis. So this gives us a sense of the actual place, what it looks like, what the living conditions of this woman named Karoli. And she continues to tell us one of the, when we talk about the violence that she's experiencing, the issues that she's going through, she tells us a story about her son and the violence that he experienced in the community, which led him to move away into the city. And she says, I want my situation to be good. You see how I am in a torn up house. That's due to the fighting that's happened in this town. Like how this house is, that no one is here. Hate came from this town and reached me. That's why the children ran away. The son who bought this house and built it, the people of this town got together and conspired against him. That is the master he was with, I'm going to skip to the next sentence. Then they planned, and one day while I was at the farm, they came to kill him. By the time I was coming from the farm, they told me, don't you see all the mud and footprints? It was your son that they were chasing, so that they beat him. It wasn't until dark that I found him at a church where the children who prayed begged for him and put him in the church. He was bleeding from the nose, mouth, and mud. So since then, he left. So this again is another portrait of the violence that Karolyi is sitting in. Her son built this house, began to build this house, but because of the violence in the community, he wasn't able to finish. The violence targeted particularly at her son, again, ran him off in a way, and that led to her situation where she doesn't have the kind of support that she would need to live a happy, a full, a fulfilled life, but she continues, of course, in the struggle. And so just to kind of summarize again, the kind of violence that the women are experiencing, we have Mary Biquet, who is another FOA leader. She says, the thing we women are struggling with the most is that you see how we are. There are people who cover us in the forest. They don't allow us to lift up. That is, there are many people who have died because there are no good hospitals. It then makes it so that Nigeria does not allow our women to rise. They tie us down. Our minds are on the many things that we would have gotten, or things that if they had happened, it would have been good for us. Because there are some people who died, that if there was a hospital and they said, go, take the medicine to drink, they attended to you and healed you, they would have lived. Because of that, many of them have died. If there were things like that, it would have helped women. So we see this just a summarizing of the violence against women, particularly that line where Ms. Biquet says, Nigeria does not allow our women to rise, they tie us down, they want to cover us in the forest. That is a way of just kind of summarizing the oppression that women are experiencing in this region and in this community. And we get to environmental degradation, of course, right? This is an ongoing problem. And one woman named Mercy Deco says, we are hungry and we plant and nothing comes of it because they have drawn all the oil from us. If you plant cassava, it doesn't grow. You won't harvest yam that will amount to any type of yam that you can eat because the oil has polluted everything. All the cassava, there's a look to it. Its leaves look like grass, not like cassava leaves. And here's an image of what it looks like still today. These oil pipes still standing in the midst of farmland. You can see the farm right behind there, and you see the oil and the water in the same vicinity as where people are growing food. And the other kind of violence that I began to speak on in the story of Karolyi is the gun violence, the ongoing gun violence, led by a lot of reasons, of course, but really on the ground, it looks like young men carrying guns, working in these almost gang-like groups, battling each other. And of course, it has political implications as well. When I asked one of the women in the communities, what's the main problem that you're experiencing today? She responds, the only gossip that's in this town today is the gun that they used to kill the people of Biara. That's the only talk in this town. So it is priority, top priority For a lot of the women. We see another example where I was attending a FOA meeting, and one of the MOSAP leaders came to the FOA meeting to implore the women to make sure that they speak on and make a priority the issues of gun violence. And so this is just a field note. It reads, then the chair of MOSAP Gokana arrived, a man named Mr. Lemon. He was given the floor to speak to the women. His main message was that women should do their best to curb the violence in the towns in Gokana. He said, as each woman leaves there, they should have direct plan concerning what they will do to help curb the violence. He turned directly to Mary Beke and begged her to please make that a priority for the meeting. So the issue of gun violence is, again, top on the list of the issues that people and women are dealing with. And as they have said repeatedly, gun violence really impedes any other forms of progress that they are working on through MOSAP and through FOA. So now that we've talked about violence and talked about how women are particularly affected by these forms of violence, I want to talk about peace, and then how I believe women are using this form of love and action to attain this peace. So FOA's nonviolent resistance really is, FOA sees nonviolence as their own form of feminist resistance. So it is the vehicle that allows them to achieve their feminist goals. Many women, including Kararoli, joined FOA and MOSAP, particularly because they saw it as an organization, as a vehicle for combating the various levels of violence that they as women experience. One woman said that what attracted her to MOSAP was that MOSAP, they don't fight, they don't quarrel, they want peace. And if they see something that will be trouble, they want peace. And so again, this peace struggle is synonymous with nonviolent struggle in this area and in this context. I've included a graphic here of kind of the relationship between nonviolence. So nonviolence would be the outward representation of their fight. And what I'm arguing is that love is really at the very core of this particular form of nonviolence, and that becomes the definition of their feminist resistance. Another overview of FOA's nonviolent resistance, as I've argued in other papers, is that I've really talked about these four main forms of nonviolent practice. So that is first the use of the gusan. So the gusan is the Ogoni word for the palm frond. So this gusan becomes a symbol of MOSAP, a symbol of FOA, a symbol of their peaceful, nonviolent organizing, and it becomes a very important part of the struggle, right? An important symbol of the struggle. They also use meetings, and these meetings are used to re-energize women, to recruit women into the struggle. And the meetings are a combination of teach-ins and pray-ins. Sometimes these meetings last all night. It often involves fasting and prayer. And so that becomes a very critical method of nonviolence that they practice. Another important method is singing. So not just singing, but song composition. So composing songs that communicate the goals and the issues of the movement. And then using dancing, and women use dance to recruit community members into the movement, use dance to communicate their struggles, their goals. And what we find is that a lot of these practices have been used before, right? We even see it in the in all the way back to anti-colonial women's organizing, like the About Women's War. And so women have repurposed these cultural practices for the MOSAP struggle and for their FOA organizing. So as I've said, at the very core of women's nonviolent resistance is this love and action. And this is what gives them the identity, what I think gives them the power, but also what really helps differentiate their type of nonviolent organizing from others. And when we're talking about this love, I show it in 4 different ways. One of the ways is the way that they love each other as FOA members. We can see it in the way that the FOA leaders patiently teach new FOA recruits. And this is a quote from Mary Biquet, who's one of the leaders, and she's talking about how she instructs newer FOA recruits on the methods of nonviolence. And she says, "You, the leader, will talk to them." She lowers her voice significantly here to mimic the tone she would use to instruct new FOA women. And you'll say, "This is how we'll keep ourselves." You'll tell them when you see them, the enemy, run, because Te Kinsarawiwa told us to run. And don't carry a sword and don't carry a gun. The only thing that we carry is the gusan, which is the palm frond. So really patiently teaching the FOA recruits what nonviolence means in their organization and making sure that every new person who joins the movement understands this and stands by this. Their love and action also shows in how they work with men. They seek to work with men in a cooperative manner. I've already shared the story of how the chairman of Mosop Gokana came to the meeting. It's just an example of how women and men continue to work together. Women always attend Mosop meetings, even as they attend their own meetings. Oh, sorry, I'm missing 2 other ones. So the other ones that are not showing here is love for community, how the women are talking about their want to progress, they're wanting to progress. And the other one is women really seeing themselves as the mothers of the community, whereby they see themselves as the ones who can, jointly with men, instruct young men, particularly the ones who have, joined in promoting this gun violence in the community. So really approaching that situation with love and approaching that situation in a motherly fashion. And so again, that is how women continue to practice this love and action, and that becomes the very core of their nonviolent activism. Oh, there it is. Sorry, my computer was playing around there. So again, love for community and advising young men in a motherly role. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my presentation here. And I want to reiterate that through a nonviolent practice, fueled by love and action, Ogoni women are able to pursue and develop their feminist goals. And if we step out a little bit further, we see that in the field of, I think, nonviolent organizing, and many of you here are probably able to attest to this. One of the conversations that we continue to have is how to implement intersectionality, this buzzword, into our organizing. And I think that the study on Ogoni women allow us to see one of the ways that we can approach that topic, particularly how women are approaching that topic. They're continuing to organize, they're continuing to press for inclusion in these larger mixed gender movements, but also holding on to the very core of their nonviolent practice, which is this love and action, right? So in a way, intersectionality is very important. But if it's translated as love and action, I think that it becomes even more powerful, right? So just an announcement. So hopefully in the next year or so, my book is coming out that's particularly on this topic. It is called For Our Survival with the University of Illinois Press. And I'll be happy to share that with the group as soon as that materializes. And then I want to thank you all for listening. And again, thank you for your patience. And if there are any questions and comments, I can take those.
Thank you very much indeed, Domali, for this wonderful presentation. And now I'm sure that I can see Janet is clapping already for you. Thank you so much indeed. And so you're welcome for questions and comments. You may raise your hand or put your question in chat. On Ogoni Women's Peace, Non-Violence, that she has explained very well. And so who would like to begin?
I think Janet is speaking, but she may be muted.
Uh-huh.
I could, thank you for your wonderful presentation. Totally clear and it really inviting us into the community on the ground, which is, of course, I live in New York City, so I don't get that privilege very often, and I'm really grateful for that. So it seems you're saying that they work on intersectionality, but it seems that you were saying that the meetings are segregated. So the men have their own meetings and the women then in response have their meetings, and sometimes men come to those women's meetings. That was one, what you seem to be saying. And I was wondering if you have any information on, this is a sort of a different, something a little aside of what you presented, but is there any post-conflict integration of the young men? So the women, and could you describe some of those processes? And the third thing I want to say is I really appreciated your description of singing and dancing as powerful mediums for organizing the community. So thank you. Intersectionality, reintegration.
Thank you for that question, Janet. Yes, right. I think that your observations are correct that so when there's a MOSUP meeting, a lot of times women will attend because MOSUP is an umbrella organization. It has, and I only mentioned FOA, but it has lots of different branches, right? Like there's not NICOP, there's the religious aspect, so many different branches, right? And FOA is just one. So when there's a MOSUP meeting, you know, everybody, all of the different branches will attend, and even in the MOSUP leadership, there are positions for women, right, to belong to that. So yes, it is a very integrated organization. One of the questions you mentioned is how the women are addressing the gun violence, right, perpetuated by the young men, right, in the communities. And of course, again, these young men are working under other leadership that tend to be older men, political leaders in the communities who are vying for power. And I personally did not observe the ways in which women are, as FOA, not as individuals, as FOA, how they are communicating with the men. However, communicating with the young men in this situation. However, one of the things that they continue to speak on during the meetings is that women who are the mothers in these households where these young men are living can use their positions as mothers to speak to these young men and really try to guide them from the domestic sphere. So that was the kinds of conversations that I overheard and observed.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Richard, if you may ask your question or make your comment, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Good afternoon from Ghana.
Afternoon.
The presentation is really interesting. One thing I've noticed about women, women are generally peacemakers. Their appearance and even their speeches. Please, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, okay. So I believe when we decide to build peace, involvement of women can not be left out. But one thing I know is that when women try to fight for equality, we are equal, we are like men, we are like that. That is what I see the conflict, or that is where I see conflict to begin, or that is where I see their role of developing peace. It's not what is it? It's not seen. So what are women actually doing? Excuse me. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. Did you complete your sentence? Yes.
Okay. So
could you complete your question, please? Because there was a bit of a gap.
Thank you. I'm saying, what are women doing to address the issue of equality, gender equality properly, so that peace will be maintained? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And a great question that I did not focus a lot of my presentation on, which is how women are fighting for gender equality, right? Which is aside, not aside, but besides, right, happening at the same time as they are, you know, fighting for these various kinds of violence that I mentioned, right? They fighting against these various kinds of violence. And so I want to kind of answer your question by showing this very short clip. It's about 10 seconds long, so bear with me. But this is a clip from last year of a MOSOP gathering where women are speaking up about that particular issue, right? What do we do about gender equality in this organization? So give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully it will play.
No me detecta el micrófono.
Pero decirle que...
Ah, perdón. Ahora sí me lo pongo. Hola, hola.
¿Cámara tenés?
Hola, hola. Sí, anda medio mal, pero te... O sea que no sé por qué se... Uy, ¿qué? Nada, ¿por qué? No hablen, no hablen, no hablen.
Sorry about
no
that.
sin
We are
saber.
trying to...
Y no. Fue una pregunta acusadora, no fue una pregunta sincera.
¿Para adelante lo tenés entendido?
Sí, papá.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
Cámara que compraste.
Could you proceed?
Okay, okay, I'll continue. So what we see here
Claro,
is,
No,
Eh,
te vi tirando las cosas, boludo.
Sí, pero se cayeron mis cosas, ¿no?
No se rompieron, se perdieron.
No, a mí no
No
se
hay ninguna, no hay ni una cámara.
Acá está.
Bueno,
Sorry, I'm trying to see how I can stop that.
sí, me podrías invitar.
Sec, please, Sec distance if you hear me. Could you please mute your microphone? Thank you.
Bueno, acá sí nos sentimos.
Bueno, la cámara, prendela.
so I just, that short clip, and I'll include the link in here so that you can see it on your own. But it is right around the 2-minute mark.
Puedes poner fondo, ¿viste?
It's right around the 2-minute mark. And a woman named Joy, one of the leaders of FOA, is pressing MOSUP as an organization and asking, reminding them, number one, that Ogoni was founded by a woman, right? And this is a well-known fact, that the community is matrilineal and has these matrilineal past. And so she's using that to speak to the MOSUP leadership and reminding them that women should be part of this organization, should have equal footing in this organization. And so if that answers your question, Dr. Richard, that first of all tells us that gender equality is an issue in the organization, and the women recognize it as an issue, and that they continue to press the MOSUP leadership to address that issue. And we see the repercussions of not addressing gender equality, right? In the community, in FOA, in the community in MOSUP, is that women continue to be heavily burdened and to assume the bulk of the violence, right? To really carry the weight of the violence that's happening in the communities. So I hope that answers your question.
Que lo vayan investigando.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you very,
Lo
very
mismo la
much.
pizarra
Okay,
de Zoom.
good.
Zoom también tiene pizarra. ¿Qué es esto?
Un coso para la estrella, ¿verdad?
George, is there a way to stop
Hay
this?
cosas que no se pueden mover.
The S, I don't know,
No
S.
hace
stand
nada,
for
Yes, I'm trying to work on that. Unfortunately, as I left because of the internet, I could not continue as
Pero digo
co-host,
gracias
so I
porque
can't.
te digo que es-
Pero te da.
But I'm trying to
No,
talk
pues, porque no tenés estrés.
to ask his colleague to stop that.
Bueno,
Sorry about
listo.
that again.
Bueno, ahí tenés
Esto-
chat, esto estaría bueno que lo vayan a
But
Hola,
if you-
¿qué tal?
explicar cómo
¿Cómo estás?
there is no way.
If somebody has a question in the meantime, then we can also try and see how to solve that as well.
¿Cómo te quedaría tumbado? ¿Estás seguro?
Yes, please,
Sí,
Dr.
bueno,
Mishra,
fíjate.
please, your microphone is muted. Yeah, thank
That's
you.
right. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Hello,
Animación.
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I
Okay,
hear you.
okay. My question is, do I conclude from your talk
No
that
entiendo esto de los
most
estilos.
of the
Ah,
women
lee y decir-
begin their life to see violence, gun or otherwise, and against this gun culture, they unite and do something in a very small way. How is their life, social life? Are there still schools? Are they accessible to internet? Can they communicate with the world? And how is the situation now in 2023?
Esa, entonces, es la sala. Estaría bueno que invites
That is a
alguien
great question. Thank you so
sala.
much.
Ponete en la compulsión también.
Bueno, invitar a chicos.
So the question is, how are the women functioning, right, with this gun violence, this ongoing gun violence? And I'm not sure that I can speak for particularly to the 2023 part of the question, because I have not been on the ground for a few years now. However, what I can speak to is what the reality was at the time that I was there, which I can speak particularly to early 2017. And first of all, I want to say that the issue of gun violence is the escalation of the gun violence, at least, is a more recent problem, right? The region, to the extent that I saw in 2017, had not seen it at that level before. So at the level where almost every, at the level of frequency, I would say, that was happening. You know, people who are on the ground are telling me that the situation has calmed down significantly since I was there. So I'm hoping that that is true. The other part of your question is how are, you know, are there schools, all of these things? Yes, schools continue to function. You know, life continues to function, but the violence just kind of becomes an undercurrent in their daily lives, and it kind of ebbs and flows. Sometimes it really stops things, and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, but from my experience, schools haven't stopped because of the violence. Marketplaces have not stopped functioning. Churches haven't necessarily stopped. It hasn't gotten to that extent. However, so people continue to function, and women, again, and MOSUP see it as a priority, particularly because for MOSUP, one of the things that they have been fighting for is the implementation of this Ogoni cleanup, of the environment. And they really see the gun violence as a priority, because if that gun violence is not taken care of, anything else cannot happen. No kind of development, no kind of progress can happen. The cleanup cannot really proceed, right? So yes, that's a great question.
Eso lo acabas de inventar, no una canción. Eso no es una canción.
Really, I'm so sorry about the background noise. And
Yeah, there's a
unfortunately, I
problem.
can't control that.
The key is, the other question I have is those of the young people who have left the community and they are now spread to advanced countries. And when they are outside of their country, do they have connection with the root? Do they try to mix, they try to meet, they try to visit, or it is unsafe to visit? How those who have transformed like you, how they communicate or how they associate with the families, women especially in that area?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So my study was a two-part study. I did a study in Nigeria and I did a study in the US. And so the part of the study that I did not speak on was the transnational aspect of the study, how MOSUP is continuing, and FOA is continuing to organize in the transnational context. So to answer that question, yes, there are relationships and they continue to organize, they continue to support the organizing that is on the ground. And MOSUP US continues to work alongside MOSUP in Nigeria to achieve its goals, and FOA likewise. What changes a little bit is that the people who are outside of Nigeria now have this added, they have a slightly different goal, added goal of fighting for survival within their contexts in their new setting, right? So particularly when we're talking about the US context, they're dealing with the issues of racism, they're dealing with the issues of issues that come with living in the US as a Black immigrant, right? And so their organizing translates into dealing with that issue as well as continuing to support the organizing on the ground. So they'll send funds, they'll organize campaigns. They're also very keen in connecting with international organizations such as Amnesty International, Friends of the Earth. That's one aspect of the organizing that's happening transnationally. And if you followed the news of the Mossab struggle, another aspect of it is happened globally in terms of the courts, right? Taking Shell to court in the US, taking Shell to court in the UK, in Amsterdam. So those things are kind of how the organizing occurs transnationally.
Okay.
¿Qué cosa?
Me puso que cuando inicie sesión se va a estar grabando.
Sorry, it seems that there's somebody trying to speak and I can't, well, I'm sorry
George,
that,
I think somebody's mic is open somewhere.
yes.
And whatever is happening over there is just disturbing the whole program. So
Yeah,
can you
that's right.
request that everybody should mute the mic? Maybe
Yes.
somebody who is open may close it.
Yeah,
Yeah?
except he will not actually hear us because it seems he's engaged in some conversation, and
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately, he's a
So,
host.
so,
Yeah, and
so
so
I have
difficult.
another question to you. You are living in Canada, and now you have seen the West, and you have also seen what is happening over there in Nigeria. In what way you are having a vision to bring a change in the status of women of that locality? In what way you are visioning? Can you think of doing something so that situation changes, or you are afraid to go there?
I want to make sure, okay, I think that I'm unmuted. That's a great question, right? So I am Ogoni, born in Ogoni. I'm a product of the government retaliation that happened in the land. So became a refugee, was exiled, right? Myself, my family, thousands others. And so I go back frequently, and I do feel safe going back. I think that Ogoni is resilient in that no matter what's happening, home is home, right? And they continue to fight for safety in their communities. So I feel safe. I think many people feel safe going back. Research is a little bit, it's a little bit of doom and gloom here because I'm really highlighting and magnifying the violence, right? But on the ground, those issues continue, but it doesn't prevent people from living and going about their daily lives. There was a point, there was a time for sure in the right around the murders of Ken Saro-Wiwa, right? I want to say 1993 through 98, that it really, it really was not safe, right? Daily life could not continue as usual. Though that time period hopefully is over. So it is a relatively, depending on your definition of safe area. Personally, I see this work as my contribution to the struggle, right? A lot of the women that I work with, a lot of the women who are leaders in this movement, and I could say the same thing about other organizations, number one, they're so busy organizing that they're not, they don't have time to record, right? To do a study. That's one. And then because of language barriers, language abilities, varying education status, a lot of times they're not able to communicate in written form, right? So I see this work as my way of documenting. And again, I'm very
No, ya está, puedes seguir probando si podés.
what's the word I'm looking for? It's very important to me that I maintain their voice and maintain their wishes, right? So I try to make sure that this study is speaking to how they are fighting and not necessarily what my priorities are, right? And so in that sense, I'm trying to keep to their words, and I'm trying to keep to their understanding, their worldview, their perspective of what feminism means. And I think that they do a much exponentially better job than I would, right? In terms of designing what a future looks like for them, right? Like they know what the future, they know what they want the future to look like for women in the community. As I mentioned in one of the quotes, they're very, very aware of the gender oppression that's happening in the community, and, day by day, they continue to struggle against that. So to kind of summarize, I see my role in writing this piece and in writing this book and in putting their stories out there as a way of contributing to the struggle in the way organizing.
Compartir un video externo.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for your patience, but also for the nice explanation. Unfortunately, we can't really manage the background noise except by trying to shout. Because, and Olufen, you wanted to know,
can I say something?
Oh, Ben.
Yeah, regarding
Ben, excuse me, since you are co-host, can you try and mute this sec?
I'm saying that this guy which name is S, who is disturbing. I think it's a evil group. Normally, nowadays the role is to disturb meetings on Zoom.
No, he's not trying to disturb anything except that he's not aware of what he's doing. Can you try and mute him? Because you are co-host now. Can you mute him?
Y acá había, ¿te acuerdas que había para compartir una pantalla acá? Y sí podía compartir. Ahora, ¿cómo me muestra eso? Chat público, a ver.
¿Vos compartiste la pizarra?
Sí, está compartida, bro.
Ben,
Dice,
Ben, can you mute the speaker?
Saque está habilitada. Hay que ir a la segunda, de dispositivo.
No, I don't understand what you mean, because I was talking.
Can you stop his microphone? Just click on the microphone there.
No, I can't do that. That is, I can't, because I'm not S, the guy who is.
No, I'm saying yeah. You are co-host now. You are co-host.
George, maybe Ben can transfer the co-host to you.
No, I'm not co-host. How can you?
You are Ben. You are co-host now, Ben.
No, I'm not co-host. Sorry. So if I'm co-host, how can I do that? I don't know.
He made you co-host. He made you co-host. It's on your name there. It's on your name. To go to participants.
For them super sites, and so but
is it on the billing
to him, and he had consulted them behind
if you click on your name and participants.
No tengo que tomar lista si hacemos una por acá.
By law,
I don't know how to do that. No, I don't know. Sorry.
All right, never mind. Never mind. Sorry about that.
Mira, ve que como soy
This hasn't happened, and he has been actually assisting us since the beginning. So he's simply not aware of what he's doing. Olufemi, you wanted to say something, right?
But in the Federal Executive Council,
I also want to tell Ben to make you the co-host, to transfer the co-host to you. So you have been able to mute all.
Of course, it's the same person who can make me, the one who is speaking, the one you hear is the one who can make me the host now. But yeah.
By allowing individuals
Yeah, sorry really about
and you are seeing that each of them is in the market looking for dollars to import the fuel cargoes. So at the time the cargo is arriving, they are already taking a decision to increase the price to meet the replacement cost. So it may have been important for the president to listen to all the dynamics of all the agencies to understand that maybe, just maybe, we may continue to use the crude swap to buy the fuel to avoid a run on the dollar, knowing that we do not have the dollars at this time. I didn't think they knew that. I didn't think they knew that the nature of our debt, that NNPC was owing $3 billion.
I think that's Janet's.
So if you look at it,
no, it's not Janet. It's Hafiz.
Oh, okay.
It's Hafiz,
Okay.
But Hafiz, can you hear us?
I think it's okay now. It's okay now.
It's okay.
Yeah, as you said, I managed to stop S.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. You are.
I don't know who made me. I don't know who made me co-host, but I saw that I could do that anyway.
And what about Lillian? What about Lillian? Who is that? And she's not muted.
Can I do the same for him?
Yes, please. Please do the same. Good job.
I love it.
By the end of the day, you are very experienced manager. Okay, thank you so much indeed. And Hafiz, you were saying something, right?
Who?
Hafiz, no? I thought that was Hafiz. Hafiz
Now, I have muted everybody who was talking.
Oh, I see. Yeah, they are in trouble today. So anyway, thank you so much, and sorry for that once again. And now somebody with another question or comment. I saw one from Peter Barras, who was saying, have the oil companies provided anything? You know the context, Domali, if you could please respond to that. Thank you.
Yes, that's a great question. And it is an ongoing question and ongoing hope, right? But there have been some progress. I believe, I want to say, I can't remember the exact dates now, right around, I want to say 2012. At the very least, when I was on the ground in 2016, 2017, the people of Bodal community, which is one of the communities in Gokana, they had successfully sued Shell and had gotten one of the biggest payouts of the history of international oil corporations, and they had received a huge payout, and so each member of the community were able to get a little bit of that payout. And so while I was there on the ground, I got to kind of see how people were using those funds. At the most, they were able to, add an addition to their house, right? That's kind of as far as it got in terms of the value of those funds. So yes, there has been some progress. One of the biggest pushes has been for this cleanup, the cleanup of the land, the cleanup of the environment. And that is what is ongoing today. Most recently, I believe just in the last couple months, MOSAP has accused, I'm forgetting the organization here, accused, some of these organizations that were contracted to do the cleanup of embezzlement. So we know how that goes in the African context. So they're really calling on the new president, President Bola Tinubu, to look into that charge, that accusation that over $800, I believe, million that they are claiming has been embezzled, that were supposed to be allotted to the cleanup. So that gives us a sense of, number one, there has been some progress. Number two, we're continuing to push, right, for transparency and for the prompt completion of this cleanup project.
Excellent. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much indeed.
Just to follow up, there was a gentleman named Donziger, who Stephen Donziger, who successfully sued Chevron for trashing the South American community. And then the oil companies retaliated, and he's now, I think he's charged with criminal contempt of court, and the Supreme Court refuses to hear any more appeals. So I think, according to Wikipedia anyway, he's now stands accused of criminal contempt. And they did this, I can't remember the details right now, but they did actually have a judge assign a prosecutorial organization, a law firm, which was basically in the pocket of the oil company. So the oil company hijacked the legal system and jailed Donziger and kept him under house arrest for something like 900 days. So I'm just wondering about this because the oil companies have been so vindictive.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It seems that they are ready at any hint of challenge, right? As that relates to the Ogoni case, the widows, I believe, in the U.S. Supreme Court anyway, one of the widows, her name is Esther Kiobe, who was one of the widows of one of the Ogoni 9 who were murdered in 1995. She, along with other Ogoni people in the US, took the case all the way to the Supreme Court against Shell. They got to the Supreme Court and were using the Donziger case as one of the, and I want to, I might be wrong about this, but I know that the Donziger case influenced the Ogoni people's, the case that they were able to build against Shell. And so they get to the Supreme Court, and Shell is, of course, able to prove that Ogoni cannot sue them in the US, right? Cannot sue them in the US, even though they have offices in New York, they have offices in different parts of and they operate, right? We see Shell oil and gas at every corner, right, in the US and many parts of the world as well. Shell argued that if they were not incorporated in the US, and so they get to the Supreme Court to find out that they cannot be sued. So the case was dropped. Esther Kiobe takes the case across the pond Last I heard, it was at the Hague. It was at the Hague courts, and the case kind of reshuffled. Now it was now based on 4 Ogoni widows, widows of the Ogoni 9, who led that case. The Hague was able to establish jurisdiction for that case, and so it was able to be heard in that court. But that gives you an example of, you know, what's happening with these cases, right? They're being pushed back and forth. These international oil companies are very adept and have a lot of connections with these political systems, and it makes them almost immune to any kind of challenge, right, for wrongdoing. So yeah, that is a very good example. The Donziger case is a very good example that has set the precedent for how to take these kinds of cases to court.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It really is encouraging. A wonderful presentation. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well said. Thank you very much, Peter, for that compliment. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful presentation, no doubt, and a great job that she's doing. And keep it up, Domale. And we are slowly coming to the end of this webinar today. If somebody has a question, you can always ask or make a comment. The final one. Nice to have you back, Janet. And so thank you all for joining Global Peace Studies for Sustainable Development in Africa. Probably, Domale, you have a takeaway, some final words for us for today before we meet again next week. We'll be now focusing on Ethiopia, and I'm sure it's going to be an interesting story from Professor Manuel in Portugal. So thank you very much indeed. Domale, please.
Thank you so much. I've just included my email in the chat here. Oh, sorry, I sent it as a direct message. I'm going to resend it. I've just included my email, please. I saw a lot of your comments and I would love to keep in touch. I'd love to connect again. I'd love to connect on other projects that anybody else is doing, if we can find some kind of common ground. And if I can be assistance, please reach out. I see one other hand. I don't know if anybody else, but yes, please reach out, and I'd be happy to chat about these issues and others. And thank you, George. And again, thank you for your team, and thank you all for your patience with this presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, and you are welcome.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. See you next week.
Okay.
See you Wednesday.
Okay. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, George. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, Ben. Bye, Lillian. Bye, Jimmy. And I will send you a contact soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.